The Forbidden Box. Have you ever heard of an object capable of ruining lives just by being near it? We're not talking about an archaeological relic or a legendary movie artifact, but a simple wine box. Ordinary in appearance, modest in size, wood worn by time. Yet, according to those who've come into contact with it, it holds something far older and more terrifying than we can imagine. It's known as the Dybbuk Box, a strange name, hard to pronounce, but laden with a spiritual weight that no one has been able to fully explain. Since it surfaced, it's been surrounded by inexplicable events, reports of panic, sudden illnesses, and, most notably, fear. Many believe that inside this box resides a malevolent spirit. Not just any ghost, but a Dibbuk, an entity from Jewish folklore. A spirit that refuses to leave this world, wandering in search of bodies to possess, or objects to cling to. But why this box? Why are the reports surrounding it so consistent, so disturbing, so real? Get ready. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and unsettling stories of modern times. A box that perhaps should never have been opened, and that even today, though locked and isolated, continues to influence all who come near it. And if you're into dark stories based on real events, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Would you dare to open the Dybbuk box? It all started quietly. A typical listing on a sales website. Old Jewish wine box. Interesting history. Mysterious items inside. Who would buy a used wine box? Kevin Manis did. An antique collector and owner of a small shop in Portland, Oregon. What he didn't know, however, is that this box would become the center of one of the internet's most disturbing paranormal stories. Soon after receiving the object, Kevin began having nightmares featuring a shadowy figure, a deformed old woman watching him with eyes filled with hatred. Objects started falling on their own. Lights flickered. The scent of jasmine, strangely sweet, permeated the rooms without explanation. But it was his mother who paid the highest price. Just minutes after touching the box, she suffered a stroke. Kevin began to suspect there was more to this simple wooden piece. And when he tried to return it to the original owners, the response was direct: "We don't want it back." And so, the fear began to spread. The box passed through several hands. Everyone who came into contact with it reported similar symptoms. Nightmares, visions of a shadowy woman, feelings of suffocation during sleep, sudden hair loss, bloodshot eyes, or even undiagnosed illnesses. The strangest part? The box had no hidden mechanisms, no traps, nothing visible to explain what was happening. But inside, objects were found that raised even more suspicion. A lock of hair tied with aged cords, 2 old coins, a wine goblet with dried flowers, a small candlestick, and a strange sculpture with Hebrew inscriptions. Each of these items seemed to have been placed there with a ritualistic purpose. As if, more than containing something, the box was sealing something inside. Yet, people continued to open it, handle it, and pass it along. The term Dibbuk isn't a modern invention, nor a creation of horror films. It comes from Jewish mystical tradition, specifically the Kabbalah, where it's described as the spirit of a deceased person who refuses to leave. Instead of moving on, this spirit clings to a living body, or in some cases, to a physical object, causing imbalance, illness, and torment. It's not a demon in the traditional sense, but a soul in distress, corrupted by anger, guilt, or unfinished desires. It's believed that a Dibbuk can only be removed through specific rituals conducted by trained rabbis, always with great risk. According to Kevin Manis, the box he purchased originally belonged to a Jewish woman who survived the Holocaust. She had brought the box to the United States after the war as part of her few possessions, but she never allowed anyone to open it. Her granddaughter, when finally parting with the box, warned, "This was never a wine cabinet." She always said it held a spirit inside. Whether this was merely symbolism from someone who had lived through indescribable horrors, or something deeper, no one knows for sure. Inside the box were seemingly harmless objects, but they formed a ritualistic set. All appeared to have been carefully arranged, as if it were a seal. As if opening that box meant more than breaking a physical barrier, but a spiritual one. Manus tried to rid himself of the box several times. He sold it, gave it away, even left it abandoned at others' doors. But it always came back. Sometimes sent by mail without a return address. Sometimes mysteriously reappearing in his shop. Simply touching the box's wood caused chills in some people and sharp pain in the temples in others. What seemed like an isolated superstition began to gain traction. When Manus wrote about the box online, dozens of similar reports began to surface. People claiming to have had experiences with similar objects. Others who felt unwell just reading about it. Some said they heard strange noises at night after researching the Dibbuk. The legend was expanding, and now no one knew if it was just folklore, or if indeed an ancient, cruel, and vengeful spirit had been sealed in that small wine box and accidentally released. After Kevin Manus shared his story, the box passed to other hands, and that's when events became even darker. Each new owner seemed to enter a cycle of torment. These weren't just coincidences, but patterns. Different people with no connection to each other reported the same symptoms. Severe insomnia, recurring nightmares, featuring a hooded figure, a constant feeling of being watched, objects moving on their own, and an intense smell of jasmine mixed with mold appearing even in sterilized environments. One subsequent owner described waking up for weeks with scratch marks on his back and arms. He tried installing cameras in the room, but no recording remained stable for more than a few minutes. The files were always corrupted or filled with strange noises, clicks, and whispered voices in unknown languages. Another owner reported that his entire house suffered a short circuit after he touched the box with bare hands. The power only returned 2 days later, with the electric company unable to explain what had happened. Perhaps the most striking case was that of a young university student who decided to acquire the box as part of an experiment for his Master S project in parapsychology. He kept a detailed journal of everything that happened. In the first days, he described only headaches and fatigue, but in the following weeks, the reports changed tone. He began hearing rhythmic knocks coming from inside the box during the early morning, had recurring dreams where he was suffocated by an invisible presence, and eventually started writing in his journal phrases he didn't remember writing. Words in Hebrew, ancient names, and strange symbols drawn in the margins of the pages. At a certain point, he abandoned the experiment and tried to burn the box, but somehow it resisted the flames. The wood wouldn't catch fire. He described this as the scariest moment of his life. It wasn't the fact that the object wouldn't burn. It was the feeling I had while watching it, as if I was being watched by something that expected exactly that reaction. That wanted me to do that, and now was satisfied. Some of these stories gained traction on the internet and were studied by channels dedicated to the supernatural. Investigators tried to reproduce the events, but many couldn't even stay near the box for long. One team claimed that during the filming of a documentary, 3 members fell ill, experienced simultaneous nosebleeds, and had to be hospitalized. The recordings from that night inexplicably disappeared from the main hard drives. Over time, the Dybbuk Box came to be considered one of the most cursed objects in the world, not because of its appearance, but because of the effects it caused. There are no videos showing it moving on its own, or voices being captured, but there's a silence around it that screams louder than any phenomenon, a kind of repulsion, as if everyone who approached it was, in some way, warned to stay away. With increasing public interest and multiplying reports, it was inevitable that cinema would take an interest in this mystery. A film hit theaters depicting the story of a cursed box based on real events, involving a spiritual entity trapped inside. The plot was loosely inspired by Kevin Manus's accounts, although the film didn't directly mention the Dybbuk Box. However, the impact was immediate. Fear spread. The legend gained new contours and solidified in the collective imagination as one of the most intriguing modern haunting cases. The original box now belongs to a well-known museum specializing in cursed objects, where it's kept under intense protection. Visitors report malaise, dizziness, and even hallucinations just by approaching the container. The curator himself states that he will never, under any circumstances, open it again. Some say that if that happens, something truly ancient will be released ... Something that never wanted to be locked away, much less studied. On the other hand, skeptics claim it's all just a well-crafted story, with elements of mysticism and psychological manipulation. That none of this is real, but that's precisely the strength of the mystery, because even those who don't believe hesitate to approach. After all, if all this is real, what exactly is sealed inside the Dybbuk box? And now I ask you, would you dare to touch this box, or even have it in your house for a night? Comment below what you believe, superstition or supernatural truth. Don't forget to like this video if this story captivated you. Subscribe to the channel for more mysteries like this, and share this video with someone who loves scary stories based on real events. And tell us, which other cursed object would you like to see in the next video?